Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Franchise Hockey 8 manager playthrough of the New York Islanders. We have been the GM of the Islanders for 7 seasons now, and we have achieved our goal to return the franchise to its former glory after rebuilding it. Won 3 Stanley Cups in those 7 years, although in the recently completed 2027-2028 season, we did fail in our quest to win a 4th consecutive Stanley Cup and match the great Islanders dynasty of the early 1980s. That said, still happy with how this playthrough has gone. Hope you're enjoying it also. If you are enjoying our shows, would really appreciate it if you subscribe and like our videos. Comment down below. Let us know what you're thinking. We are going to continue playing through this, try to see if we can win a 4th championship this season and match what the Islanders did back in the 1980s, even though it won't be 4 in a row. Interestingly, we are looking for our 5th coach now in those, this will be the start of our 8th season as general manager of the Islanders. We had Barry Trotz for our first 2 seasons. Then we had Alain Vigneault, who we won a championship with in his 2nd season, and then he retired. Then we had Kevin Dineen for 2 seasons, both championships, and then he retired. And last season we had Bruce Cassidy, who did not win the championship with us and then retired. So we will be hiring our 5th coach in 8 years, which will be interesting. I've taken a quick look, and it looks like we should have some decent options there. We'll talk about those more shortly. Looking at our roster, with our 23 men, we are already over the salary cap, so going to have to make some changes. At the end, or towards the middle to end of last season, when we were near the trade deadline, we talked about trading away longtime defenseman Adam Pelech, and I think we may try to do that this offseason. He's due $5.75 million this year, 33 years old in the last year of his contract, and you can see he only played 34 games for us last year. He is at this point kind of viewed, at least by the previous coaching staff, as the 7th defenseman on our roster, and it's a very expensive luxury to have that. He's a great stay-at-home defenseman, but if he's not playing, he's not offering us a ton of value, and if we are able to trade him away to somebody looking for a good veteran defenseman, that will open up a little bit more money for us to actually change the team a little bit this offseason. Looking at our annual budget, we are going to raise ticket prices by $9, which will put them at $100. We've been selling out pretty consistently, won 3 Stanley Cups in the last 4 years, have a big market, even though our fans are disloyal. So hopefully we can generate a little extra revenue by raising prices there. Going to do normal maintenance on the arena, normal budget, normal player development, and normal marketing spending. Not going to spend a ton. Our owner generally takes about half of our starting points as profit taking. So we feel like we're kind of usually running the franchise at a bit of a shoestring budget, unfortunately. Monthly changes for the next couple of months. Going to bump up scouting a little bit to +3. Team morale spending we're going to cut back a bit while the players are not really with the club, and we're also going to cut down game promotions and arena operations since we won't actually have any games for the next couple months during the off season. Try to save a couple points there as well. In addition to needing to find a new head coach, we're also going to need to probably find a defensive coach. Simon Runnison, who had been our defensive coach the last couple years, also retired. So I'm going to be looking to find a couple of coaches to round out the coaching staff. It's possible that our defensive coach is already on the team. We have some good kind of coaches in reserve at this point in Todd Richards and Jim Hiller, as well as John Gruden, who don't have specific assignments. So very possible that one of them will end up filling in as our head defensive coach. So we're going to try to find another head coach who is pretty good, actually very good at just about everything. So we're looking for someone who is 15s or better in player management, motivation, discipline, decent in negotiation and self-preservation. Don't care as much about those, but we don't want somebody who's a complete awkward clown as our head coach either in those ratings. And then someone who also has 15 tactics and 15 in-game tactics. So looking at that, we've got one option, Mike Sullivan, who was actually the runner-up last season when we brought on Cassidy. It looks like he has not picked up another job since he was let go by the Penguins. Really nice profile, pretty strong at just about everything you would want him to be as the head coach of a team, and also pretty good goalie ratings. Particularly if you're not talking about coaching goalies. So Mike Sullivan is going to be hopefully the new head coach of the New York Islanders, $2.1 million a year for the next 4 seasons. Good to have him on staff. We did kind of go through our existing coaches, and Jim Hiller is a pretty strong defensive coach, excellent at coaching defenders, great with prospects, very good with offensive training, and good with defense training. We're going to see if maybe we can find somebody on the employment line who is a little better than him, but if he goes into this season being our defensive coach, that's fine also. And looking for a search to see if maybe there's some great unicorn defensive coach out there. Looking for an assistant coach who's at least a 16 in coaching defense, 15 with prospects, 16 in defensive skills, and 15 in offensive skills. And not surprisingly, nobody meets those criteria if you're just looking at the assistant coaches. Even dropping it down just a notch, Jamie Hayward, let's see what he looks like. 16 coaching defense, 17 with prospects, 15 defensive skills, and 16 offensive skills. He's also pretty good with forwards, pretty good with physical training, just a good, solid coach. We are going to try to hire him to bring him onto the team also. It's pretty close with whether we would want him or Hiller to actually be the defensive coach, but gives us another strong staff member in the event that we have retirements down the line. You can see Hiller, excellent, great, very good, good. If we assign that to Hayward, very good, great, very good, very good. I think I'm going to go with Hayward. He's a little better on defensive training, and I think with defensemen that's critical. And also still obviously very good to great at everything else that he'll be doing as our head defensive coach. Looking at our scouting staff, we've got great coverage across the entire world at this point. Could be 20 out of 20 if we were willing to spend the extra points to get there, but I think 18 out of 20 will get us where we need. Also at this point, having run the team for 7 seasons, you can see we have got a lot of scouts around the world who are excellent in both scouting for ability and potential. So feel pretty good that we're getting accurate readings on just about every player that we would want to at this point. Looking at the players who will be free agents, a couple stand out to us right now. Joel Farabee, who you may remember we thought about trading for before the trade deadline last season, but our minor league system and our draft picks are so depleted that we just could not put an offer together for him. But the Flyers have let him go. He's looking for a little over $7 million a year for 6 years, so we would have to definitely make some other moves to bring him on board. But interestingly, Jackson Lacombe of the Rangers, another defenseman, 27 years old, he is only looking for a little over $5 million a year for 3 years. So that's less than what we are paying Pelech right now. So it seems insane that somebody might actually trade for Pelech when you could just sign a younger player who's probably a better player for less money. But that being said, Pelech, as we've noted, still has a 16 defensive rating and is a great stay-at-home defenseman. So there's definitely a role for him on many teams in the league. Just seems like right now the talent level on the Islanders is so high that maybe there's not a role for him with us this season. So we're going to make an offer to Lacombe, looking for $5.1 million a year for 3 years. Let's see if we can get him for a little less than that. 3 years at $4.75 million a year. I'm still looking for a little more. Bump it up to $4.95 a year for those 3 seasons, and yeah, he'll take that. He very well may come back to us and say that he's looking for more than that, but if we can get him for $700,000 to $800,000 less than we're paying Pelech right now, I think the right move is to bring on Lacombe and see what we can get for Pelech. Perhaps not surprisingly, Jackson Lacombe has got a better offer than the one we gave him, so let's see exactly what he's looking for. $5.7 million for 3 years is what he's looking for now. So that's about what we're paying Pelech right now, but he is a better player than Pelech all around right now, even though he is not as good as a defenseman. So let's see if he will go for $5.75 million a year for 3 years. Says it's a fair offer. We'll see what happens there. And I think we need to kind of accelerate our potential to trade Pelech. I'm going to try to see if there's any teams that are weak at defense that have some money to spend, and see what they are potentially willing to give us for Pelech. Well, I think we found the salary dump for Pelech. The Stars have a little bit of opening with their payroll, and they're a very weak team that kind of needs everything. They're willing to take on Pelech as long as we also give them a middling prospect, Oleg Fedotyev, who's 22 years old, and they'll give us a 5th-round pick in return. It says that they'll probably accept this offer. We're going to go ahead and propose that trade to them, see what happens, and hopefully we can bring Lacombe on board for similar amount to what we are paying Pelech now. Still gonna, if we do that, have to find about close to $1 million to get out of the payroll somewhere, so going to be working on that also. The hope was that we would have been able to get Lacombe for somewhat less than Pelech, but doesn't seem like that's the case right now. But at the very least, if we get him at the same money, he's younger and he's a better player at this point. And we've got an interesting situation potentially coming up here. You probably remember that last offseason we had to trade 3 number 1s plus Travis Konechny to bring on Noel Gunler, who was our leading goal scorer last year. And then also in the big trade that we made with the Stars for Miro Heiskanen, we had to give up the great young prospect Justin Huynh. But the Stars did send us back their first rounder this coming season. So although we don't have any of our first rounders for the next 3 drafts, we do have the Stars first rounder this season, and just noticed that they are in the draft lottery. So, as I mentioned, when we proposed the trade of Pelech to them a little back, they looked like a pretty bad team with a lot of weaknesses, but I hadn't thought that they were that bad. So this could be pretty interesting. Looks like they were expected to get the 4th pick in the draft. Let's see if we can do a little better as the Islanders. We're going to be getting the 5th pick in the draft, but that is still a huge pick for a team that's perennial playoff contender to be getting. Probably not going to find someone at number 5 who can help us immediately this year, but we'll certainly try and see if there's anybody out there. And the Stars have accepted our offer, so we are going to trade away the great veteran defenseman Adam Pelech to them. Basically a total salary dump, complete the trade. And the good news is that does get us well under the salary cap right now. Obviously, if we're able to make our free agent acquisition, we'll be back over, and we'll have to do a little adjustment to find a way to take about $1 million out of the payroll and get back under. But step one of our plan to hopefully modestly improve the roster as we try to win a Stanley Cup has been executed with the departure of the longtime Islander Adam Pelech. And we are to our 5th pick in the draft now, and we have some interesting options. If you're just looking purely at potential, then there's Torsten Jansson from Sweden or Albrecht Weigl, goaltender, who have the most potential of anybody out there. But I'm quite honestly intrigued by a couple of young Canadian players. Preston Archer here, you can see he's already viewed by our scout as a 3-star player with 3.5 potential, and similar for Peter Letowski. Archer, 15 offense, 14 defense, 15 physical, and 12 mental, scored 64 goals in 45 games, or 64 points in 45 games in the WHL last year. Letowski also in the WHL, 85 points in 62 games. Potentially bringing one of those players on board. Letowski's going to be 18 by the time the regular season starts. You can see a solid offensive profile, okay defensively. His physical skills definitely need some development, but he's got a pretty good mental profile. Our scouts see him as a potential Bouvillier type of player, and he's ranked 7th among North American skaters, so he's certainly an interesting prospect. Preston Archer, already 18 years old, looking at his ratings, looks like he could be a very dynamic offensive player, solid defensively, and pretty good physically, especially at 18 years old. His mental ratings are, leave a little bit to be desired at this point, but still got excellent professionalism, temperament, and determination. Just kind of his leadership and his aggression and bravery are a little bit low. Our scouts see him as the number 3 skater in the draft. And I think the reason Archer could be interesting is that I think he could play with us on the NHL roster this year if we needed him to, and what that would allow us to do, since we are a little bit above the cap, if we're able to make the free agent signing we like, we would probably need to get rid of Atu Rati, who's making $2.4 million, or Alexander Campbell, who's making $2.4 million, and getting rid of one of them in exchange for the young prospect or somebody else would open up enough cap space to have us under the cap while still making the big improvement on defense that we're looking at. So I think I have talked myself into bringing on Mr. Archer with the 5th pick in the draft, the young Canadian. We'll see whether we end up bringing him up to the NHL team or not, but I think he is not too far away if we let him spend another year in the juniors. This one trade has kind of given us someone who hopefully can supplement our roster at the NHL level in very short order. So Preston Archer, with the pick that we got from the Dallas Stars for trading away the great young defensive prospect Justin Huynh. Welcome to the New York Islanders. And a bit of a bummer that we didn't step up. Jackson Lacombe just announced to us that he's been signed with the Devils. They paid him about $6.5 million a year, so that's significantly more, about $750,000 more than we were at in our last offer to him. So, not a shock that he went to the Devils rather than us. That said, was going to be a little tricky to fit him under the cap anyways. Actually, we weren't going to be able to completely fit him under the cap. So we are going to take another look through what's actually available on the free agent list at this point. Still definitely some options out there, although it on the defensive line, on the blue line, little less out there. Struble looks like he is the highest rated player out there and actually has a decent profile, it looks like. So we will take a look, see what he's looking for. And we are also going to sign right now our recent pick, Preston Archer. His preference is major junior, but I think if we make a, put him on the AHL team or the NHL team this coming season, it will work out fine for all of us. So we will make an offer to the young first rounder, 5th pick in the draft, and see whether he has potential to go straight from the NHL draft into the lineup of the Islanders, as we did with Tanner Howe just a few seasons ago. Well, with Macombe signing with the Devils, have to make a little bit of a change. Looking at free agent defensemen, the two that kind of really stand out to us are Jaden Struble and Ryan Johnson. Both are looking for about $4.5 million a year for next season, or for a multiple year contract. So we're going to think about both of them. The other option is to check out the trading block, and the most interesting option there, I think, is Adam Boqvist of the Blue Jackets. Really impressive offensive defenseman, okay defensively, good physical ratings, and pretty strong mentally. He's making a bit more than them at about $5.5 million a year, but he's a better player. I think the preference would be to see if we can trade for Boqvist. But if it's going to take a ton to get him, then we'll probably go for one of the other defensemen who's not quite as good a player, but at least we only have to spend money on, rather than giving up prospects, other players, or draft capital. And Boqvist is certainly better, but what he's going to take is just going to be too much. We offered him the rights to goalie Sergei Ivanov. Probably not worth all that much, but he's a good 24-year-older. Just doesn't want to sign a two-way contract with us. But then we also basically offered all of the draft capital we have, which at this point is our second rounders in 29, 30, and 31, and the one first rounder that we have on the books now in 2031. And our scout thinks that there's no way that they'll even accept that offer. So although Boqvist would be a better player to add than the ones who are available in free agency, I think we'll take the less expensive route and go for one of the young free agent defensemen. In comparing our two options among the free agent defensemen, Jaden Struble and Ryan Johnson, both about to turn 27 years old, both primarily left defensemen, a little more versatility on the part of Struble, who is someone who could play right in a pinch a little bit better than Johnson could. Looking at their offensive ratings, pretty similar. Not completely similar. I mean, there's some differences, but screening favors Struble, getting open favors Struble, passing and puck handling small favor to Johnson, shooting accuracy Struble a little better, shooting range Struble better, and offensive read they're similar. So I'd say small advantage to Struble, thinking about the offensive ratings. Defensive ratings similar on checking, Struble a little better on face-offs, Johnson a little better hitting, a little better positioning, a little better shot blocking, a little worse stick checking, and similar defensive reads. So small advantage to Johnson looking at the defensive ratings. They're both 6 feet tall. Struble outweighs him by 10 pounds for what that's worth, but very similar. Physical ratings, a little bit more differentiation here. Ryan Johnson, better agility, a little better balance, a little better speed, much more stamina. but a little less strength, but would still favor Ryan Johnson on the physical ratings a bit. And then mentally, probably a small advantage potentially for Jaden Struble, just being a much better team player and a somewhat better leader, similar determination, but he's also more aggressive, not as good temperament. So they're very similar players. Johnson is actually looking for a little bit more money, given that we think he's slightly better physically and defensively, though. We'll try to make Johnson the play at this point, but Struble will certainly be a fine backup if things don't work out with Johnson and he's still available. And Johnson's looking for $4.48 million a year for the next 4 years. We're going to offer him a little less, $4.25 million for the next 3 seasons. See what he thinks about that. Still wants a little more. Bump it up to $4.35 million, and we'll see what he thinks about that offer. And fortunately, even though we offered a little less than he was looking for, didn't run into what we ran into with Jackson Lacombe. Ryan Johnson immediately signed the contract. Still waiting to hear back from the draft pick Preston Archer. But good to have Ryan Johnson on board, and given that he's making materially less, about $1.4 million less than Pellick had been, that allows us to fit him under the cap. We would send John Ludwig down to Bridgeport to get back to a 23-man roster, and you can see we're just under $81 million right now. So perhaps are not going to have to make a trade to get rid of Campbell or Ratti. But we're going to keep our options open if it's the right move to move on from one of those guys and bring on the rookie to the NHL roster when we sign him. We will do that. Trying to add a little depth for the organization in free agency now. These players, quite honestly, are probably too good and too expensive, but Noah Dauer Nielsen, young Swedish player, 23 years old, was never drafted in the NHL, so he's a free agent now. No one has his rights. He was projected to be pick number 106 in 2023, but just never was drafted. He could be a player who could play for us in a pinch, and he's only looking for $800,000 a year over 2 years. So I think if he's willing to, he will be willing to sign an entry-level contract, that he could be an interesting addition for us. Let's see if he'll sign for $800,000 a year with $70,000 a year in the AHL. He wants a slight amount more. That extra $7,357 makes a big difference to him. Fine. Meet the demand, make an offer to him. See if maybe we can bring him on for a little bit of youth and organizational depth. Other than that, would still like to add another free agent defenseman. This is going to be a player who will be in Bridgeport unless we have injuries. Just really looking for some organizational depth right now, but I think with some of these 3.5-star players, we might be able to find someone who's a decent defensive defenseman, only looking for, $800,000 to $900,000 or $1 million a season. If we can find someone who's willing to go on a two-way, that would be huge. Maybe this guy here, Jacob Przydlicka, might. Let's take a look at him and what his background is. He's been all over the place. He was a 6th-round pick by the Hurricanes, traded between the Canucks and the Hurricanes, went to the Swedish League for a few seasons. Wonder what he is looking for, if we can get him on a two-way. That would be huge. I'm sure he's not going to like that. Oh, actually, no. He needs an entry-level contract. So, yeah, we'll meet his demand and offer him a two-way. He probably doesn't know that there's only way he's going to be on the NHL roster is if we have some injuries, but would love to have him at Bridgeport for a season, giving us a little bit of organizational depth. And we've signed the youngster Preston Archer, who we just took with the number 5 pick in the draft. Consensus is that the guy's got 5-star potential. Our scouts see him as 3.5-star potential, but I would tend to think that our scouts are a little more accurate, but we still think he can become a Beauvillier type of player over time. Glad to have him on board. He's probably not going to be thrilled if he ends up spending the season or part of it in Bridgeport, but as I mentioned, with Archer on board, Rati, Campbell, maybe even Stenberg, certainly Daniil Butt, Jeremy Leroux. There's a lot of options who could end up in Bridgeport instead of him or end up traded instead of him. So he has a legit chance at being on the NHL roster this year at the age of 18. We're in mid-July now and feel pretty good with the way we built the team out. It's just under the salary cap, just under $81 million. So we've got about, $600,000 to play with if we wanted to. But really the main move in the offseason is trading away Pelech and bringing on Ryan Johnson, which, although it weakens our defense a little bit in terms of the pure defensive skills, I think that Johnson is a more dynamic offensive player, better playmaker, and certainly 6 or 7 years younger. So I think that that'll be a good move for us. Other than that, we've just signed some organizational depth, signed the rookie Archer, and signed some prospects that we had drafted in previous years off of our protected list, who will be in Bridgeport or Worcester for us most likely. Now the situation with the Islanders comes to starting to think about the future. We've got a lot of players in the final year of their contract, most notably our star goalie, Brett Brochu. Definitely want to bring him back. Heiskanen, who we traded for, is going to be looking for a lot of money, but had a really nice year for us. Dobson and Beauvillier, going to be looking for some money, and in the case of Beauvillier, on the wrong side of 30 at this point, but would love to bring him back. One of our captains, Alexander Campbell, Daniil Butt, Gunler, who we traded the farm away for. We're going to need to get him extended. Leroux, definitely a young player who hopefully we can get back on a relatively reasonable contract for a couple more years. Natchez will be the interesting one. He is one of the players that we traded for when we really ripped the Islanders up and turned this thing around. Been with us, as you can see, for the last 4 seasons, so 3 Stanley Cup wins for him. A very talented offensive player. Typically has been a first or second liner for us, but certainly now is our second line right winger at best, and he's been a very good offensive player for us, but I expected more. So depending on what he's going to look at, with the fact that we're going to be needing to likely spend a lot of money to bring back Nola Gunler, we may end up moving on from Natchez, but we'll work on some of those things, let you know what we're thinking. Certainly not going to be able to get all of those players signed with how close we are to the cap already, and the fact that most, if not all of them, are going to be looking for raises. I guess our hope is that maybe Heiskanen is looking for a little less than $8.5 million in which case that would definitely help us if we're able to pull a little money out of his contract. Yeah, he's only looking for a little over $7 million. Now, he does want 6 years, and he's going to be turning 29 tomorrow, so I don't know that that's a contract that we want to make as long as he wants, but it will open up a little bit of money that hopefully will make it a little easier for us to bring back some of the other free agents who are going to be expensive. Might as well just take a look now to get an idea of what we're dealing with. Natchez looking for a little raise to the $6 million area. That's going to be tough. Gundler is the key one. We're going to have to give him whatever he wants after everything we traded for him. He's only looking for $6 million also. So the fact that him and Natchez are looking for a similar amount, Gundler is better. Gundler is younger. He's clearly going to get the money from us first, but that's going to be a significant raise. Our old buddy Beauvillier, he's making about $5 million a year now, and he's looking for a raise. That's going to be tough with a player who's going to be 32 next season. And importantly, Brochu, the young goalie, his should be relatively reasonable given... Oh, actually, no, we are already past his... we are already past him being a restricted free agent. He is going to be an unrestricted free agent, so that is definitely a twist that I knew about if I think about it in retrospect, but wasn't thinking about. So we've got some interesting decisions to make. Maybe we let Brochu play things out this year and let Perek, who looks better on paper and we have signed for another couple seasons, become the starter again next year. We still have some depth at the minors with Tristan Lennox, so maybe we're going to be moving on from Brochu, and maybe we'll do something similar with him that we did with Ottinger a couple years ago, and trade him away in the middle of the season if we can get a bunch for him. You know, the pick that we got for Ottinger ended up just turning into a player that we think has a lot of potential for us in Archer. So there's actually, that was not the pick that we got for Archer. That was a different pick for Ottinger. But regardless, we did get a pick for Ottinger who... I can't remember who we turned it into at this point, or maybe we ended up trading it away at some point. It all kind of runs together at some points. So after trading away 3 first-round picks and Travis Konechny to bring on Gundler, we definitely need to bring him back. He is the top priority. He's looking for $6.09 million for 4 years. We're going to start out and see if he'll go for $5.75 million for 5 years. Probably not going to go for it, but would love to just get him wrapped up through the prime of his career. It's a reasonable offer. Maybe we'll get him for about $340,000 a year, less than he was looking for, and an extra year for the Islanders. So we will definitely submit that offer to Gundler, and I think right now it's very doubtful that we're going to make an extension offer to Brochu with what he's looking for, but hopefully can get a few of the younger players like Leroux and Daniil Butt signed. They should be on restricted contracts, so they should be more reasonable. Yeah, Jeremy Leroux will auto-qualify him, looking for $1.3 million a year for 3 years. Let's see if he'll take that down to $3 million or $1.25 million a year, and would love it if he signed a two-way with us. Don't know that he actually will. It's probably going to offend him, but yeah, no interest in a two-way deal. That's fine. $1.27 million a year for the next few years for Leroux. And last but not least, Daniil Butt, another youngster. Auto-qualify him. See if he will possibly go for a two-way, which I'm sure he will not, but gotta ask the question. Yeah, he does not want anything to do with a two-way. Meet his demand, $1.26 million for the next few years. So a couple offers out there from the Islanders. Obviously, Gunler is the most important. All right, we've got Daniil Boot, Jeremy Leroux, and most importantly, Noel Gunler signed. So 3 players signed to extensions who are in the final year of their contract, which is good. Probably going to make an offer to Brochu just to get him locked up. He certainly will still have some trade value. Try to get him locked up for a decent amount. He's likely to be our starter this year, but we'll get him locked up now, and then we can potentially get some value for him next offseason to a goalie-needy team. The older players, Heiskanen, Beauvillier, going to be, in HS even, are going to be more difficult decisions for us. And then Campbell, we were just thinking about trading away if we needed to make salary cap space just a few weeks ago. He's looking for $5.1 million. Yeah, that's way more than we want to pay Alexander Campbell. So definitely we'll consider bringing back the likes of Natchez, Dobson, and Heiskanen, but Campbell at 27 years old, going to turn 28 this year. Did have a great year for us in 25-26 when he scored 25 goals, but do not see him being a $5 million player for us with the salary cap situation that we are going to be in next season. Dobson's been with us a while now, grown up in the organization. Good stay-at-home defenseman who actually, is kind of a two-way player with some decent offensive ratings, very strong mentally. Physically not as great as some players. Just a good guy to have on the team. Making $4.4 million this year. Looking for a small raise to $4.8 million. I don't know that we can pay him that much, but let's see if he'll take a small pay cut. I think it's just going to enrage him, but I don't really want to pay him more than we're paying him right now. Yeah, he definitely wants more than that. So we'll give you a small raise to $4.5 million a year. So a $100,000 a year raise. How will he react to that? Getting close, looking for 4.53. We'll meet that demand. Hopefully we can get Dobson lined back up. Heiskanen is going to be tough. Really good player, but getting older. And he's looking for a long contract with a lot of money, and that's neither of those things are what we want to do. Just turned 29 years old, making $6.6 million this year, although his cap hit is $8.45 million. And he's looking for a raise to about $7 million a year for 6 years with a no movement clause. That's not something we're going to act on right now. We can always try to re-sign him at the end of the season. He may be more reasonable to his age if he has an off year. Natchez, don't want to let him go, but he's going to turn 30 during the season. Looking for $6.2 million a year for 7 years with a no movement clause. I think that's another one where we see how he plays. If he has a down year, maybe we can get him back for less money for less seasons. Brochu, we are going to try to make an offer to get him signed a little more reasonably than he's looking for. Looking for 5.22 for 3 years. We are going to offer him $4.75 million for 4 years. See how he reacts to that. He really wants the 3 years. That's fine. He's probably not going to be with us much longer anyways. It's signing him more to have him as an asset that we can potentially trade next offseason. Yeah, he's good with $4.85 million for 3 years, so we'll make that offer to him also. And then the last big decision is going to be Beauvillier among some of these veterans. He's wearing the A on his uniform. He's been with us a long time. Tends to get banged up a bit. You can see 3 of the last 4 seasons he's missed, or 2 of the last 4 seasons he's missed significant time, making close to $5 million a year right now. Looking for an actual raise to $5.3 million a year. The good thing is he's only looking for 2 years, so I think he's kind of being realistic about the length. I mean, granted, he is a little older than Nechas or Heiskanen, but not that much older. That when those guys asking for 6 and 7 year contracts, almost feel better giving Beauvillier a couple of years. But I think that's another one that we are going to just let play through during the season. It's hard to imagine at his age that his price is going to go up materially, and perhaps when we get through the regular season, get to May and June, we can get him signed to an extension for a more reasonable amount. And obviously with any of these older guys, it's also possible that they just completely fall off physically or suffer a major injury this year, in which case their value could be even lower, or we may just not be interested in bringing them back. So a lot of uncertainty for what the Islanders roster is going to look like next season with those 3 critical players playing on the last year of their contracts. But I think given their age and the amount of money that they're looking for, it's the right thing to do for the franchise. And the rest of the summer was uneventful. We are now in the fall. It's September 25th. As usual, we have a full camp, 39 players here. Bring up, almost everyone who we have signed to contracts. You can see we've got 44 players signed to contracts. 39 of them are here at the early stages of camp, given that we are only the GM. Think we know what we have in the players with the scouts, but every once in a while the coaching staff will play somebody in the preseason and you may find out something that you didn't know about them. So also want a lot of players, just so if people are banged up, the coaching staff is not tempted to push anyone and turn an injury into something that lingers for longer. So about 14 or 15 of the additional players that we have up here are almost guaranteed to be in Bridgeport in a couple of weeks in the AHL. But we'll see what happens with camp, and we'll see what the final roster looks like, as well as the injury situation after we get through a couple weeks of preseason hockey. Well, we've made it through training camp at the point where we're going to make the final cuts. No major injuries. Had some difficult decisions with players that we have already sent down, most notably with some of the high-quality young centers, Otto Stenberg, Noah Doer-Nielsen, who we just signed this past off-season. Sent both of them down, and then Tristan Lennox and Evan Millet, the young goalies, are both going to be in Bridgeport this season. And then the left wingers, Zhugin, Petrov, and Stromgren, as well as the center, Tobias Omen. Some of the final cuts as we kind of prepared the roster. We're at 24 players right now, and the final decision is going to come down to Preston Archer, the 18-year-old that we just took with the 5th pick in the draft, or potentially Daniil But, who was up only 1 game last season but did score 54 points in Bridgeport for us in the AHL with 23 goals. Given that But is 23 years old, we are going to keep him up, and we are going to send Archer down. 18-year-old coming out of the WHL. I just don't think he's going to get a lot of playing time with the Islanders at the NHL level. We are actually going to send him all the way down. Actually, we can't. He wants to either be on the Major League roster or can't play him in the minors because he's so young. We've either got to keep him up or we're going to loan him back to Vancouver for the season, let him play another year in the WHL. That move gets us under the salary cap. Just don't think that with us being a team that's trying to win the Stanley Cup right now and a pretty high-powered veteran roster, I think if he stayed with us, he was probably only going to play, 30 or 40 games and probably only 8 to 10 minutes a game, unless we had some real significant injuries, which I'm hoping we don't. So I think just in terms of his development, although we thought he might be a key piece this year if we decided to trade away Raté or Campbell, both of those guys are still with the club. We were able to get ourselves under the salary cap. So we will see what the youngster does with another season in the WHL, and then hopefully next season when, as you know, we're going to be potentially replacing multiple forwards with Natchez, Campbell, and Beauvillier all in the final year of their contracts with us. He could have a much bigger role with us next season if we don't re-sign all of those players, and we certainly won't be able to afford to re-sign them all. If we're lucky, maybe out of Natchez, Campbell, Beauvillier, and Heiskanen, we're able to bring 2 of those 4 back at the end of the season. So the team is healthy. We are ready for the regular season to begin. We will call this episode a wrap. Would love your thoughts on what we did and didn't do this off season below. Thank you so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.